What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Triple Ball Breakdown. So today we got a pretty fun episode. We're going to be talking about everything that happened in NFL Week 3, just going over everything, giving a few hot takes. And most important, I'm going to give one new thing that we learned about every single NFL team this week. So, it should be pretty fun. And yes, so I think that we can get into it in a minute. But first, I just wanted to say, once this channel gets to about 200 subscribers, I'm going to up the amount of time that my videos are. So currently my videos are like 40 to 50 minutes. But once this channel gets to 200 subscribers, I'm going to up that to about an hour and a half to 2 hours per video. And I'll also post more frequently. So I'll put more time into the channel, and it should be pretty fun. Yeah, I'm excited to do that. It should be pretty fun. I'm excited for this episode today. There's a few there's some upsets and some crazy blowouts. So there was a few, games that were unexpected. But I'm excited to talk about all of it, go over all of it. So it should be pretty fun. All right, so let's get into it. So the first game, I'm going to go in order. So the first game happened of this week was on Thursday, and then the last game was on Monday, so I'll just go in order. So the first game of the week was on Thursday. It was the Dolphins and Bills game. So unsurprisingly, the Bills won this game. It was 31-21. But the thing that we need to know here is that the Dolphins actually they were in the game for a while. It was 7-7, then 14-14, then 21-21. So the Bills snuck away at the end, but it was pretty close for the first 3 quarters. And even though the Dolphins didn't play that great, neither did the Bills. But the Dolphins aren't a good team. Tua is their quarterback, is not very good. You could literally take every single one of his attributes, put it into a quarterback, and that's one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL already. So it's he's not a very good player. In terms of the other players on the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, he had a hard time. He missed that one catch that kept replaying. Everybody saw it, but he didn't have a great game. The Dolphins are starting to lose it. And if I'm the Dolphins right now, I'm getting a new quarterback. They need to fire Tua already, or trade him, or do something with him, because he's not a good quarterback. I have him on my fantasy football team as my backup quarterback, but my starting quarterback, Brock Purdy, was injured. So I had to put Tua in, and he gave me 0 fantasy points. He's just not a good player overall. He's been a top 10 quarterback in the past years, but he's not there anymore. So in terms of the Bills though, they played a mid game. It was all right. They were just playing one of the worst teams in the NFL, so that's the reason why they won this game. But Josh Allen had a pretty good game. James Cook did good again. I think James Cook is probably when coming into this season, nobody really saw him as a top 5, 6, or even 7 running back. But he's proven he might even be a top 3 running back so far. A lot of the running backs that were supposed to do really good aren't doing good. So where the ones that you didn't expect to do good are doing good. Saquon Barkley, he's doing fine, but he's not doing what people expected him to be doing. There's a few other names I could go off of. Derrick Henry keeps fumbling the ball. He has that problem now. And, those are just a few players that aren't doing what they're expected to do. But then there's these other players like Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, in terms of, running the ball, that are all of a sudden doing great. And so something that, you didn't really expect to see. But, it's there. So, the Bills won this game. It was a pretty good game. I really liked it, but I think that next time, if this happens for the Bills, if they play like this, playing a regular team that's not as bad as the Dolphins, if they play the Bears, they'll probably still sneak out with a win if they play like this. But if they play another team the way that they played against the Dolphins, an average team, they probably wouldn't win. So they didn't do very good in this game, but they still won. They escaped with a win. So that's that was the first game of the season. So I'll say one thing that I learned about each team. So the one thing that I learned about the Dolphins is that this is not a mistake. People were saying they're the worst team in the NFL for the first 2 weeks. that was not a mistake. They are the worst team in the NFL. I don't even think it's close. Like, they are just playing so bad, and even though their record matches a team like, the Giants record, if the Giants played the Dolphins, I think it would be a complete blowout with the Giants winning that game. Just in my opinion, the Dolphins aren't a good team. They're probably at the bottom of the NFL. So yeah, that's my take on them for this game. They're the worst team in the NFL. For the Bills, one new thing that we learned from the Bills this week is actually about their running back, James Cook. He is a top 5 running back in the league currently. He's not doing the best. Like, we're seeing better right now. Like, Jonathan Taylor's probably doing a little bit better. There are probably a few other names that are doing better, but he is probably a top 5 running back in the league. As of currently, maybe that will change in a few weeks. But as of the first 3 weeks of the season, he's a top 5 running back for sure. So yeah, that's my take on that. And that was the first game of the week, and we're going to move on to the second now. So the second one was the Bengals and the Vikings game. So the Vikings absolutely destroyed the Bengals. It wasn't even close. The score was like 50-10 or something. It was in the 40-10. It was like the 48-10, I believe. But the Bengals they're just not a good team without Joe Burrow, and this is just a little taste of what it's going to be like this season for the Bengals now that they have to do almost 3 months without Joe Burrow. In terms of the Vikings, they're 2-1 now. They're not doing great, but they're doing good enough to where it's like, okay, maybe we're a playoff team. So that's what's going on for the Vikings. This game was not a very fun game to watch because the Vikings didn't play good, but neither did the Bengals. The Bengals had no offense in this game. They threw for 1 touchdown and 1 field goal, I believe, but their offense was not good. They can't do good without Joe Burrow leading their offense. They have the best wide receiver 2 in the league with T. Higgins, and one of the best wide receivers in the league with Jamar Chase. So you expect them to be good. And then they also have Chase Brown at running back. He's a great running back. He's not a top 5 running back, but he's a good running back. So you'd expect them to do better than they are. But without Joe Burrow, it kind of makes sense. Jake Browning is filling in for him. And, he's not a great quarterback. We've seen him have, these stints where he did good and he was actually able to lead them to, an over 500 record while he was filling in for Joe Burrow. But that was a while ago. That's not happening anymore. He's not a very good player. In terms of the Vikings, though, the Vikings have not a great defense. They have a pretty good offense. They have Justin Jefferson, who's a top 3 wide receiver in the league, probably. Currently, he's not playing like that, though. I don't even think he's a top 10 wide receiver as of so far, but we know it just hasn't clicked for him yet, and when it does, it's going to turn on, and he's going to go back to being a top 3 wide receiver in the league. He did do better this game than he has in his past games, because the game against the Falcons, he got 2 catches in the entire game. That was last week. He got 2 catches. He did get 65 yards or something like that, but he only got 2 catches. It wasn't a very good game for him. In terms of the Vikings, J.J. McCarthy, we saw him in week 2. He did not play good in week 2. He played good in week 1 for 2 quarters of the week 1 game, and he played amazing. But then he played bad for the other 2 quarters, and then he played bad for the entire next game. This game, so it was just an interesting game to watch overall, I'd say. That's it. That's all I have to say for that game. Now I'm going to go over one thing that we learned about those teams. So for the Bengals, we learned that the Bengals are not good without Joe Burrow, yes. So the Bengals, I just explained it all pretty much. They can't really run their offense without him, and their defense isn't that good. So there's not much hope for them when they don't have a good quarterback to run the ball, because he's basically leading their team, because without him they don't have a good defense, and without him he's basically the person who makes the offense work. So that's about it for the Bengals. Moving on to the Vikings, it's we learned from the Vikings this season that they might be a playoff team. Yeah, they are a good team. They might be a playoff team this season. so far they're starting out 2-1 in the first 3 weeks, but they are also not doing like amazing. Like, we want to see them be playing a little bit better to be a playoff team, but I think that they make the playoffs this season, maybe as a wild card. But I think that, they don't have the toughest schedule. I think that they can get into the playoffs this season. So, moving on from that game, we got the Texans and Jaguars game. So this was a pretty slow game. The Jaguars won 17-10, so they started out their season pretty good with like a 2-1 record. The Texans, their defense did pretty good, like holding the team to 17 points. It's not like the greatest thing of all time, but I guess it's pretty impressive. It's pretty hard to hold a team to 17 points unless they have a terrible offense. But, the Jaguars do have Brian Thomas Jr., they do have Trevor Lawrence. Did either of those players play their greatest games ever? No. Did they even play good games? No. Brian Thomas Jr. didn't do good at all. But still, the Jaguars obviously played good enough to beat the Texans. The Jaguars don't have a great defense. Just the Texans couldn't produce anything on offense. It wasn't going the Texans' way this game. I was looking at the stats earlier, and I was actually pretty impressed with C.J. Stroud. So he did throw 2 interceptions, but he did throw for over 200 yards and a touchdown. I've honestly never seen him throw over 200 yards because, he's not really, the type of guy who throws for the yards. He's more of, the type of guy who runs, he'll get the touchdowns, but he runs the ball down the field, using his running backs. Nico Collins had 8 receptions, a touchdown, and over 100 yards, so he had a pretty good game. Trevor Lawrence threw an interception, 220 yards. It was a pretty good game for, for the players on both teams, although it wasn't a good game for Brian Thomas Jr. on the Jaguars. But one new thing that we learned about each team here is that let's start with the Jaguars because they won. The Jaguars, Brian Thomas Jr. may not be a top 10 receiver this year. And so basically the reason why I think this is we're seeing so much talent out of nowhere from these other young guys. Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, all of a sudden, those are the big names in the NFL. Emeka Ukumba, did I pronounce his name right? He's on the Buccaneers. He's a rising star too, and he's doing great. So, we're seeing this on all the teams in the NFL. Each team is starting to find out that they have that one receiver who could be a top 10 receiver, out of nowhere. And, I bet you that 4 out of the top 10 projected top 10 receivers won't even be in the top 10. But Brian Thomas Jr., I don't think there's going to be space for him to be a top 10 receiver this year. So yeah, that's the thing I learned from the Jaguars this year. This week. The thing that I learned from the Texans this week is that Nico Collins is a really good player. So, obviously we knew that, but he played an amazing game. He averaged 13 yards on passing. He had 8 receptions, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. He just had an amazing game. It was phenomenal. I think that he's going to be a top 8, maybe 9 receiver in the league this year. Because if I'm going to be honest, I don't think maybe Justin Jefferson will be a top 10 receiver this year. But I think it's going to be towards the back. I think Nico Collins will also be a top 10 receiver this year, but also, again, towards the back of that top 10 list. So, yeah, let's move on from that. Next, we got the Colts and Titans game. So, the Colts blew out. They wasn't a blowout, but they beat the Titans 40-20, about 40-20, yeah. So, the Colts are 3-0 and the Titans are 0-3. Daniel Jones had a great game, 230 yards, a touchdown. Cam Ward threw an interception. He didn't have a fabulous game. He had a pretty mid game. But, so, it's pretty hard to say that this was a non-expected game because, the Colts are a good team. The Titans are not. So, I'm just going to get straight to what we learned about each team. The thing that we learned from the Titans is that they are just that bad. I don't even think that they probably should have gone with Cam Ward for the first pick. I think that maybe Travis Hunter was even a better pick. And then I got two things that we learned about the Colts this week, because both of those things are really big. So the first thing is that the Colts are real, they might not be an immediately championship contender, but they are going to be up there. They're going to make the playoffs, and they are probably going to get deep into the playoffs. I'm definitely expecting them to get deep into the playoffs. They have Daniel Jones, who's doing fabulous, so I definitely expect them to get to that point. And I do think that was my first thing that I learned for the Colts, because I think that they're 100% a playoff team, and possibly they can get to the championship, the Super Bowl. But I don't think that they will get to the Super Bowl, but I definitely think that they will make a run in the playoffs, because they are a fabulous team. The second thing that I learned about the Colts is about Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, no doubt. This is probably a hot take more than something that we learned this week, but I say that he ends this year as a top 3 running back in the league. He's just so good. I was watching him. I watched this game, and every single time he would run the ball, he would just get past people. He got 17 carries. That's a lot of carries. 100 yards, not 230 yards. That was Daniel Jones. Just a little bit over 100 yards in rushing, and then 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns is amazing. If you have this player on your fantasy team, that's pretty good for you. So I definitely say that he's an amazing player. Those are my 2 takes on the Colts. I think Jonathan Taylor's a top 3 running back at the end of the year, and I think that the Colts are a playoff team, and a team that will get deep into the playoffs, possibly even the Super Bowl. So that's about it for the Colts and Titans game. Next we had after the Colts and Titans game, it was the Raiders and Commanders game. So the Commanders they didn't blow up, but they beat the Raiders 24-41. So it was a pretty good game. It was a high-scoring game. Those are always fun to watch. But the Commanders, we saw something from them this week that we didn't see from them last week. So last week they played the Packers. They lost 28-17 or something like that. But we also saw that Jaden Daniels got hurt in that week. So this week Marcus Mariota filled in for him, and they still won. So Marcus Mariota threw for over 200 yards and a touchdown. No interceptions. It was a pretty good game for him. In terms of rushing yards, though, for the Commanders, also Austin Eckler's out. So Jeremy McNichols, led the rushing yards for the Commanders. Terry McLaurin, it's not that hard to think about. He led the receiving yards for the Commanders. In terms of the Raiders, though, Geno Smith threw for probably one of the best games of his career. Almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. It was an amazing game for him. Ashton Johnsey, though, is a rising star. He's just like Jonathan Taylor. He's like a mix of Jonathan Taylor and Malik Neighbors, if Malik Neighbors was a running back, though, because he got 17 carries, 63 yards. On paper, that doesn't sound very good, because that's an average of barely over 3 yards per carry. But he just played so good. You could see it. He played very good. I would say that Ashton Johnsey ends up as a top 10 running back in the league this year. I don't know where he was projected to be, but he's probably going to be a top 10 running back at the end of the year. He's just a great player. So I'm going to give, again, a take / something that I learned from them this week. For the Raiders, let's start with the Raiders. I learned that they're probably not going to be a playoff team. They won their first game, lost their next 2. They did play the Chargers and they played the Commanders, but I expect them to honestly probably win this game, because, they're playing a team where, Jaden Daniels injured. He's not in this game, so that's obviously a big problem for them off the board. The next thing is that Deebo Samuel, he didn't have a good game. He didn't have a bad game, but he didn't have a good game. Terry McLaurin, he led the receiving yards for the Commanders, but still, He only got 3 receptions with 74 yards. That's not a lot. Especially that's not a lot of receptions. It's only 3 and only 74 yards. So I think that nobody had a fantastic game. Marcus Mariota had a pretty good game, but nobody on the Commanders had a great game. So I say that the Raiders should have won this game if they are a playoff team, and they did not win this game. So I don't say that they're a playoff team this season. I kind of learned that this week. I expected them to probably make the playoffs as a wild card this year, but they didn't. I don't think that they are actually, because after this game, I just saw the way they played. They didn't play that good, so I don't expect them to, make the playoffs this year. In terms of the Commanders, I think that the Commanders are a wild card team this year. That's the thing that I learned from them this week. I just watched them play. They played when they played a Raiders team that played the way that they played this week. Sorry, I keep saying played. The Raiders didn't do as good as they should have, but the way that the Commanders played against that, I expect them to be a wild card team. At the worst, they're probably going to be a playoff team, but at the worst, they'll be a wild card team. They are a fantastic team, and I definitely think that they can make the playoffs, and definitely the wild card at least. So yeah, the next game was the Rams and Eagles game. So this is definitely game of the week, probably a top 3 game of the year. So basically, Eagles were down like 26-7, I think. It basically looked like it was over for them. It was like in the third quarter. But then, Jalen Hurts throws to Dallas Goedert for the touchdown. And then from there, all the momentum goes into the Eagles' way. At the end, point is that the score is 26-27. The Eagles are winning, but the Rams have a field goal in line, and it's not that far. It was like, 40-yard field goal or something. So, yeah, it definitely should have been there for the, it definitely should have been made for the Rams, but it didn't get made. What happened was the Eagles defense blocked it. I don't know who blocked it. Was it Jalen Carter? I'm not sure for sure, but I think it was Jalen Carter who blocked it. And then someone on the Eagles special teams ran it into the end zone for the touchdown. So it was just impressive overall, that game. And I definitely think that both these teams played great. The Rams sort of lost it. They scored 0 points in the second half. Matthew Stafford also started out the game with an interception, but he threw for almost 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts also picked it up at the end. He threw for 3 touchdowns. Anyway, the Philadelphia Eagles are now 3-0, undefeated. Rams are 2-1 now, so they're not undefeated anymore. Kyren Williams played a great game, 20 carries, almost 100 yards. So I want to see more of that from him because he's a great player. Saquon Barkley did not have a great game. He had 18 carries and only 45 yards. So when you have 18 carries, I expect if you are a top 10 running back in the league, I expect you to get at least like 90 yards with 18 carries. He didn't get that. So he didn't even get close to that. He got half of that. So I don't think he didn't have a good game. Maybe it was just one game that was bad for him. Or maybe this is going to be what we're seeing from him all season. Hopefully it's not what we're seeing from him all season. Hopefully he progresses over what happened. A.J. Brown kind of he was in a little slump, I guess you could say, for the first 2 weeks. He kind of got out of it. 6 receptions, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. Puka Nacua, though, he had a fantastic game. 11 receptions, 112 yards. So if anybody that I just mentioned is on your fantasy team, feel pretty good. So yeah, that was a pretty good game. I'm going to quickly just say the one thing that I learned about each team, and then I'm going to move on to the next game, because we got a lot of games ahead of us. So, one thing that I learned from the Eagles this week is that they are definitely championship contender, or Super Bowl winner contender, I guess you could say. But, okay, so when you look at which teams you think are going to win the Super Bowl, you think Bills, Ravens, you could go on for a little bit, Packers, maybe even the Chiefs. Every single year, they just somehow make the Super Bowl. Somehow, whatever. Point is, I think that the Eagles are still a championship contender this season. You don't expect them to be it this season, but I think that they are this season. So, yeah, That's my take on that for the Eagles. Next, for the Rams, I say that the Rams make a deep playoff run this season. So in terms of when you can say make a deep playoff run, you're saying make it to like the conference finals or maybe even to the Super Bowl. So only like 5 or 6 teams you could say are going to make a deep playoff run. I've already said like 3 of them are going to make a deep playoff run. But I think that the Rams do make a deep playoff run. They started out the season pretty good. They put up a really good fight against a really good team. They just got unlucky at the end, but they should have done better in the second half in general. If they scored 1 touchdown in the second half, they would have won, because it would have made the Eagles at least lose a field goal or a touchdown, because they would have, been like lost their momentum. Also, the other thing is that the Rams took 4 field goals in the first half. That shouldn't have happened. They settled for 4 field goals. They should be more aggressive and be able to get a touchdown out of one of those. So yeah, that's my take on both those teams. Next, let's move on to the Falcons and Panthers game. So, very big surprise here. Panthers blew them out 30-0. The Panthers are not the team that we expected to do good this season at all. Basically, the Panthers just played mid, whatever. They played probably better than they usually play. It was just the Falcons didn't play good at all. Like, nobody on their team played good. Michael Penix Jr. threw 2 interceptions. That's a big thing to think about. Bijan Robinson only got 72 yards. Drake London only got 55 yards for their team. But over on the Panthers team, Chuba Hubbard, 73 yards. Ted McMillan, 48 yards. So, it was just a better game for the Panthers. But on top of the fact that the Falcons just kept throwing interceptions and couldn't, get a touchdown or a field goal their entire game, they literally punted or got turned over on downs every single play of the game, or every single drive of the game. So basically, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's just all I have to say for this game. It was definitely entertaining to watch if you're a Panthers fan, but I just think that this shows that the Falcons may not be as good as we think they are. They won week 2 against the Vikings. They blew them out, but week 1 they lost. So I think this just shows that, maybe they're not as good as we thought, but maybe the Panthers are not totally the worst team in the NFL. We all thought that they were the worst team in the NFL, but after seeing this game and seeing the other Dolphins game, maybe we think that they are not the worst team in the NFL. Maybe they're only a top 3 worst team in the NFL. So I'm going to say the one thing that we learned for each team this week, or a hot take. But one thing that I learned about both teams, so I'm not going to count this, is that neither of these teams are playoff teams. I expected the Falcons to maybe be a wild card team. I didn't expect them to make the playoffs, but I expected them to be maybe a wild card team. On paper, they have one of the best teams in the NFL, but they just don't play good. But I guess they're probably not even going to be a wild card team this season. But so next we got the hot take / thing that we learned this week. So for the Panthers, it's that not all hope is lost. You guys are not the worst team in the NFL. If you guys played the Dolphins, you guys would win. Also, the Dolphins are probably going to go 1-16 or 0-17 this season. One of those. Next, it's for the Falcons. Maybe your offense needs to get better. On paper, you have Bijan Robinson. He was supposed to be the best running back in the league this season. You have Drake London, who was supposed to be a top 10 wide receiver this season. You have Michael Penix Jr., who's a rising star. You guys should definitely be better, but your offense just needs to get better. On paper, it's one of the best in the league, but it just needs to get better. You guys need to learn how to play better together, and that's just it. So next we got the Steelers and Patriots game. Steelers won by 1 score. It was 21-14. Aaron Rodgers threw an interception, but he threw for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it was a pretty good game for him. Jaylen Warren had 47 yards. So actually, there's a very interesting thing here. Let's go to... So first, there's a very interesting thing on both sides. First, starting with the Steelers, Jaylen Warren led rushing yards and receiving yards. 47 rushing yards and 34 receiving yards. He's a running back, but he was able to lead both those categories. For the Patriots, it's Drake May led rushing yards as well. He got 7 carries, which is more than you'll see from a QB. Normally you'll see like 2 or 3 in a game. But also 45 yards is pretty good for 7 carries. That's like, I'm not very good at math. That's like 6 yards per carry or something. Almost 6 yards per carry for a quarterback. That's pretty good. And unless you're playing the 49ers defense, that's pretty good for a quarterback to average in a game or to get in a game. So, yeah, this was a pretty entertaining game. It was slow, though. It was pretty slow the entire game. But Steelers ended up coming out with the win. So now the Steelers are 2-1 and the Patriots are 1-2. So neither of these teams are playoff teams in my eyes. But I think that one of them has a chance for a wild card. So one thing that we learned about each team is that for the Steelers, maybe Aaron Rodgers is not as old as we thought he is. At the beginning of the season, I was like, how is this guy still playing? He's like freaking older than my grandparents. But now maybe he's back in his 30s or his 20s. I don't know. He actually played not a bad game. Like, it was not a great game. Literally almost any other starting quarterback played a better game than him. Drake May, who was on the other side, played a better game than him. But still, it was a game that just shows maybe he can just get back. Because, like, we thought he's a bad quarterback. Maybe he's not a bad quarterback. Maybe he's your average Joe. For the Patriots, it's Drake May is a star. That's what we learned this week. We obviously knew he was a star, but we don't expect him to be a top 10 quarterback in the league. We never would expect him to be a top 5 quarterback in the league for the rest of his career. I think he has a chance of being a top 5 quarterback. He threw for like 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, also an interception. But I think that in the next 10 years he can be a top 5 quarterback in the league. Maybe one of those seasons, maybe not for a while, and maybe he'll be number 5 and not like number 2 or 1, but I think he will get there eventually. So yeah, that's what we learned from this week for those games. So the next game was the Packers and Browns game. Another literal probably game of the week. It might be the game of the week. It's between that and the Eagles-Rams game. Packers came into this game literally hoping to win 40-0. Like, they probably came into this game saying, okay, we know we're going to win, but can we win by 40? That's probably their mindset coming into this game. But instead, neither team could get a touchdown or a field goal or get any points on the board for the entire game, pretty much. And finally, Packers got on the board. It was like 10-0. But then Browns immediately just came back. It was 10-10. Anyway, the Packers line up with like 20 seconds left for a field goal, tie game. Again, at their like 40-yard line. They thought that this game was over. We're going to score a field goal right here. Then the Browns are going to like not be able to get a touchdown or a field goal after we score this. We win this game. They thought it was that easy, but no. Browns block their field goal, and then somehow in those 20 seconds they can get it down the field enough to score the field goal to win the game. So Browns win 13-10. Very unexpected. So one thing that we learned from each team is that Packers definitely, I'm just going to go straight to this because I want to talk about it so much. Packers definitely got overhyped. So they're still a championship contender team, don't get me wrong, but people were saying, can they go 17-0? Literally after the week 2 game, didn't one of their players say, I think we're going to go 17-0 or something. But point is that Packers defense did great. They only allowed 13 points. And remember, this is the NFL. It's an average to get like 25 points in a game. This is pretty good. But the Browns defense also did amazing. Like, out of nowhere. That's what I learned from this game. The Browns defense is actually good. It's one of the best in the NFL. This was literally the 2 best defensive players going against each other. Myles Garrett, probably the best defensive player, and Micah Parsons. Myles Garrett was able to read the defense better than Micah Parsons could. This was literally just a defense versus defense game. There was like no offense in this game. So it was just fun to watch the defense because like neither team could really get anything the entire game. So it was just fun to watch the defense chase the QBs around during the game. So next we got the Jets and Buccaneers game. Another game where a field goal was blocked and that changed the course of the game. So the Jets blocked the Buccaneers field goal late in the game. Anyway, Buccaneers were somehow able to win the game 29-27. Buccaneers are now 3-0. They are definitely a playoff team, for sure. We already knew that, though. The Jets are 0-3, I believe. Yeah, they're 0-3, but they are just this was another game that it's pretty rare. Tyrod Taylor, the Jets quarterback, he led their rushing yards as well. He had 8 carries and 48 yards, so about 6 yards per carry. That's pretty good. Baker Mayfield had a good game, over 230 yards. He did throw an interception, though, and no touchdowns. But Emeka Egbuka, I think that's how you pronounce it. He is just a star. That's what we learned from this game. 85 yards, 6 receptions. I say from this game, the thing that we learned about the Buccaneers, Emeka Egbuka is a top 10 receiver in the league. However, I'm not certain of that, but I think he's going to be a top 10 receiver in the league at the end of the year. For the Jets, it's that they need to up their running game because, you know, they're in terms of rushing yards, it was not a good game for them. Tyrod Taylor led with 48. Braylon Allen had 30, and then Breece Hall had 21. Their players had 8 carries, 6 carries, and 9 carries, and only got 48 yards, 30 yards, and 21 yards. That's not good. When you have 9 carries, you shouldn't have 21 yards. You should have, this was Breece Hall, by the way, 9 carries. I'm expecting you to get, if you want to be a top 10 running back in the league with 9 carries, 45 yards at the minimum. More, though, if you can. So, yeah, that's my take for the Jets. They need to up their running game, or what we learned from them this week. Next, we got the Broncos and Chargers game. This was a good game. I suggest you watch it if you haven't watched the highlights at least. Chargers win 23-20. Both these teams are 2-0 coming into this game. Or maybe the Broncos are actually 1-1. Yeah, the Broncos were 1-1 coming into this game, but still they were expected to be a playoff team this season. So I'm gonna just go straight to the hot take / what we learned, and then I'll talk about the stats and everything. So starting off with the Broncos, I don't think they're a playoff team this season. They're 1-2. They're just not playing like a playoff team. I just don't think that they're gonna do it this season. Maybe next season though. Bo Nix is a rising star. For the Chargers, they are an amazing team. They have a great offense. Their defense is fine. They are making a deep run in the playoffs this year. I think that they are a championship contender. Maybe not going to win it. I don't think that they are going to win it. But I think they're definitely a contender to go to the conference finals. Maybe, possibly, maybe in some sort of world they'll be able to make it to the Super Bowl. Justin Herbert, 300 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Bo Nix, 150 yards and a touchdown. Bo Nix had a great game. Omarion Hampton had a good game in terms of rushing, 70 yards, a touchdown, 20 carries. J.K. Dobbins led the Broncos in rushing yards, 83 rushing yards, a touchdown, and 11 carries. So I say that both these teams played a good game. The Chargers just played a little bit better, but easily the Broncos could have escaped with this game. It was the Chargers were down, not by a lot. Coming into the third quarter, the Chargers were down 13-17 coming into the third quarter. Coming into the fourth quarter, 13-17. And then they were able to score a touchdown and a field goal, while the Broncos could only get a field goal in the fourth quarter. But if the Broncos turned that field goal into a touchdown, then the Broncos win the game. So it's that simple. Broncos were this close to winning this game. They are both amazing teams, but I just don't think that there's space for the Broncos in the playoffs this season. So yeah, that's about it for that game. Next, we got the Saints and Seahawks game. Seahawks dominated 44-13. There's nothing I really learned from either of these teams this year. Jackson Smith-Njigba didn't play like he did for his first 2 games, but he still played good for the Seahawks. In terms of the Saints, they're not a playoff team. We already know that. They're probably a top 3 worst team in the NFL. They are 0-3 now. Yeah, because they lost week 2 against the Niners, and they were 0-1 coming into that. So, or maybe they are 1-2. Let's check that. They are 0-3, yeah. So, basically, I think that Sam Darnold, when you have a quarter like the Seahawks, listen, he didn't do anything wrong as of recently, but if the Seahawks wants to become playoff contenders, because they're not playoff contenders this year, but if they want to become playoff contenders next year or the year after that, then they need another quarterback better than Sam Darnold. If I'm looking at that team, I'm thinking, okay, what type of quarterbacks are good? There are so many quarterbacks that they could pick up that are good. But I don't think that Sam Darnold is a good fit for this team. Maybe he's a good fit somewhere else, but I don't think he's a good fit for this team. So, yeah, I find the Seahawks, I would trade him, or I would, release him, or I would do something like that. Find the Saints, though. Alvin Kamara is a freaking freak, but, still, he's a one-man thing, can't lead the team. Spencer Rattler didn't have a great game. He had a great first 2 weeks, but didn't have a great game in week 3. So yeah, there's not anything I really learned from these games except Seahawks are definitely not a championship contender. They are like 1-2, but I still say that they're not a championship contender. No, they're 2-1 actually. Yeah, they're 2-1, but they're still not a championship contender. Still not a playoff contender. The Saints are probably the top 5 worst team in the league, I'd say. I want to say that. So I kind of just made those up right now, my hot takes for that. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Saints top 5 worst team, and for as of the Seahawks, they need a new quarterback that's not Sam Darnold, and they're also not a playoff team. Next we got the Cowboys and Bears game. This was a very surprising game. Bears were like literally a top 3. Like, people were putting them with the Dolphins and the Panthers as like the worst teams coming into this game. But then they beat the Packers by double their points. I mean, the Cowboys by double their points. So the score was 31-14. Cowboys didn't have a great game. CeeDee Lamb is not there. If he was there, maybe they could have won. But he was questionable coming into the game. He ended up not playing. For the Bears, Caleb Williams had a great game. So, I don't think people were saying, oh, he was a bad first pick. Maybe he wasn't the greatest option for first pick. Maybe maybe the Bears would have been a better team going with someone else. But still, he was not a bad pick. And I think he's better than Michael Penix Jr., honestly. Like, he was not a bad pick for sure. Next, so that's just about it. So I'm going to give my hot takes. My hot take for the Cowboys is that they are not a playoff team. And my hot take for the Bears is that they are not a top 3 worst team this season. So this is pretty interesting because people are saying, oh, this game doesn't matter. CeeDee Lamb wasn't there. Dak Prescott didn't have a good game. That was the only reason why they lost. But no, I think the Bears actually played a pretty good game. I think Caleb Williams had a good game, and I think this is just a little taste of what we'll see this season. I say that they win a minimum of 3 games this season. I say 3 to 6 games this season is what they're going to win. They were expected to do pretty good coming into the season. They haven't done good so far, though. So next, after that, the next game that happened this week was the Cardinals and 49ers game. Wow. I definitely suggest watching this if you like either of these teams. It was a great game. It was a very slow game at the beginning, but then it picked up. 49ers were like, I watched this game too. 49ers were like, it was 13-13, I think. Yeah, 13-13. 49ers have the ball at their own 5-yard line with 3 minutes left in the game. So the 49ers, they are at their own 5-yard line. They're right next to the end zone. They snap the ball. Mac Jones, who is filling in for Brock Purdy because he's injured, who had a fantastic game too, is getting brushed. He literally was about to get sacked in the end zone, which would be a safety and basically end the game. But he was able to make it out of the end zone, but then a flag was called. Anyway, he didn't get sacked in the end zone. He got sacked at the 5-yard line again, so I don't think that they lost or gained any yards on that play. But the flag was for holding, and the 49ers got a 10-yard penalty, which did create a safety. So now 49ers are down 15-13. Anyway, they do the safety kick. It's recovered by the Cardinals. They get a 1-2-3 on downs against the Cardinals. So now they have a minute to go, and they're at their own 25-yard line. They're down by 2 with a minute to go at their own 25-yard line. Mac Jones is probably one of the greatest drives we'll ever see from him in his career. He, without thinking about it, every single time, he snaps the ball, he gets it to someone right at the end, right for a first down, right there for the first down, 10 yards every single throw. Next, he quickly runs everybody up. He calls the play number, snaps it, first down. Same thing, and it goes for the entire minute. They use one timeout there. And then they make the field goal when time runs out. They make it with 0 seconds left, and they win the game by 1. So the score is 15-16. 49ers win this game, but it was a fantastic game. I suggest watching it. So one thing that we learned from the 49ers, this is a hot take from me. I say that the 49ers go 17-0 this season. Wait, don't explode at me. Basically, the 49ers, if they had a regular schedule, they'd probably go 7-10 or 8-9. Probably pretty average record, maybe even below average. But they have the easiest schedule probably ever assembled. They are the best team that they play all season is the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are a good team, but I think that for one game they can walk in and beat the Buccaneers. And then the only other team besides the Buccaneers is the Rams. And I say that they can also beat the Rams. Besides those two teams, third best team that they play is the Jaguars or the Seahawks, whatever. Teams that they've already beat or can beat. So I think that they can possibly go 17-0. I'm not saying that they will. It might be 16-1 or 15-2. It probably will be. But I think that there's definitely a chance for them to go 17-0. For the Cardinals, we learned that this is the same old Cardinals. They started out the season 2-0, but Kyler Murray did not have a great game. Both quarterbacks should have started out the game better. Mac Jones did great at the end, but both quarterbacks, this NFL game, if you're saying that your offense is good in this game, then the score is not going to be 15-16. It's going to be 30-30 or something like that. It's not. So I can't say that either offenses did great, but both offenses did fine. Defenses did great. If you're a 49ers fan, there's some bad news. Nick Bosa tore his ACL. He's out for the rest of the season. So, yeah, that's about it for the 49ers and the Cardinals game. Next, we got the Chiefs and Giants game. So the Chiefs won their first game of the season, but they probably kind of still suck. They played an 0-2 Giants team, which is now 0-3. The score was 22-9. I'm not surprised that the Chiefs won. They were not playing a good team. The Giants do have a really good defense. But one thing that I am about to say is probably going to shock your mind. So I think my hot take, I'm just going to get right to it because it's probably the biggest hot take of this video. I see that the Chiefs are not a playoff team this year. That might sound crazy. They are 1-2. I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, how can you say that? They're literally just going to do everything that they do every single other season. They're going to, just somehow do good even though their team sucks, and they're somehow going to do good in every single game. Listen to this. Rashid Rice, suspended for the first 6 weeks. Travis Kelce, he's older than my grandpa. Patrick Mahomes not playing as good as we expected. Isaiah Pacheco also doing shit. Their entire team is playing trash. I don't think that they are a playoff team this season. I'm just going to say it. They also have a pretty tough schedule. So I don't think they are a playoff team this season, let alone go to the Super Bowl. I don't think that's realistic this season with all the talent and all the other teams this season. I don't think it's realistic. For the Giants, though, I think that they have a chance at going 2-15 this season. On record, they're probably going to be a top 4 worst team in the league. On if you're looking at their record, they're not a top 4 worst team in the league though. But I think that's what it's going to say on their record. They have a tough schedule, and also just the team. It's just not going to work out for them this season. Unfortunately, they're definitely not making playoffs. But I say that they're a top 4 worst team on record this season. Next, we got the last game, Lions and Ravens. Upset. Lions win 38-30. Both teams play good. We learned that from the Ravens now that Derrick Henry has the fumble syndrome, which is basically a thing where he cannot go one game without fumbling the ball. If I can see that from him, maybe I'll just diagnose it from him. But in the meantime, he has that. In terms of the Lions, they are a great team. They definitely played a terrible week 1, but they showed in week 2 and 3 that they are not done. They are still a good team. So I say that Lions championship contender, just right off the bat. I'm just going to say it. They're definitely a playoff team, but I think that they are a championship contender because I saw the way that they beat the Ravens, who are supposed to be championship contenders. For the Ravens, I say that they're not championship contenders. They start out their season 1 and 2. They're just not doing good. They're probably going to make the playoffs, but I just don't think that they're going to be championship contenders this season. So, yeah, basically, in terms of who did good, David Montgomery did amazing for the Lions. I was actually playing him in fantasy, and he's the reason why I lost this week. He had 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, 12 carries for 151 yards. That's over 10 yards per carry. That's just amazing. Derrick Henry had a touchdown, 50 yards, 12 carries. Lamar Jackson had an outstanding game. Almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had an outstanding game. That's about it for that. I think that we're done actually now. So that was all the games this week. Again, I'm just gonna go over what I said at the beginning of the video. Once this channel gets to 200 subscribers, I'm gonna start making the videos. Like right now, the video is at like 51 minutes. I'm gonna switch it to start being 2 hour long, 1.5 hour long videos. So if you guys can get this channel up to 200 subscribers, then I'll definitely do it. I love making these videos. It's fun. And I think that, if I can get to 200 subscribers and we could do this, it would be really fun. So yeah, thank you for watching and subscribe to the channel.